Hi folks, it's Becky and welcome back to Mountain Glen Farm. Today's interview is with Greg Judy. I met up with Greg back in September at the Stockman Grass Farmer event at Polyface Farms, and we talked about leasing land, how to keep it, and the importance of fitting genetics with your environment and your grazing principles. We talked about South Pole cattle. We talked about indicators on whether you know if you're going in the right direction as a grazer, and some things and strategies you can use as a grazer today. So we go over a lot of information in just a 13-minute interview. So hope you guys enjoy. Well, Greg, thanks for taking a couple of minutes here with me at the Stockman Grass Farmer event to chat. You just gave your presentation, and I always really enjoy it because you wrap so many personal stories of your past few decades farming and kind of how you've come out of bankruptcy into the situation where you're at now, and you are leasing 18 farms, I think you said?
Yeah, we're at 18 farms now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
For let me start on that topic. One thing you mentioned a lot is land leasing and the benefits of leasing versus buying land.
Correct.
Especially right now with the land prices being astronomical.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even make a living on farming with that type of land prices.
Nope.
So in your talk, you mentioned the appreciation. You were talking about a story about one of your landowners and calling you up and really being appreciative of what you're doing on the farm. So
Correct.
It's not an economic tip. It's more of a verbal appreciation. Can you go into a little bit about kind of the value of the appreciation of landowners and them seeing that farming can be done a different way and showing young people that you can make a living doing it this way?
Yeah, so what you're trying to do is build this, emotional, if you want to call it that. Landowners, the last speaker said it, landowners are emotional. And especially when you start doing things good to their property. And they're not stupid. They can see improvements on the land. They can see how hard you're working with the land, and you're trying to work in sync with nature. You're not, going in and destroying their property. And then they all of a sudden, they start to see the animals and how well they're out there and they're happy. You're living a good lifestyle. And next thing they know, their farm looks like a park. And they're like, Greg, I don't know what you're doing out here, but what you're doing looks right. And so what you're trying to do is get a long-term relationship with that landowner so that they don't kick you off. And if you don't build that relationship early on, a lot of people lose leases on land. And so you go in, you put in all the improvements, you put in a lot of sweat and a lot of equity, and 1 to 2 years later, you're like, this just isn't really working out for either one of us. We decided to go in another direction. That's your fault. Or I feel like it's my fault if I lose a lease. Now, that's being a little bit hard on me. Maybe it's putting a little bit of pressure on me, but I'll take that pressure. Because I take it on as a challenge, Becky. I don't want to lose that lease. Because if I do, I'm out of business on that farm.
Right.
And so I look at it this way. If you can find a piece of land, and it doesn't have to be a very big piece, let's say 5 acres, 10 acres, and you can get a lease on that, and then start with that. Start with one. It's the same way with marketing. Start with one. And do well with that, you might get another one.
So leasing land is a very economical way to start farming.
Correct.
What is your take on the importance of fitting the genetics of your animals, whatever they be, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, to your environment and grazing farming principles?
You're speaking my language. I don't know where you got that such a good description, but that's exactly the way we believe. You've got to get the right animal class out there. You've got to get the right size. And I say, if you'll pull the crutches out from underneath your animals and let them adapt from in other words, whatever comes out of your soil and grows on your farm, pick the animals that thrive in that environment. Get rid of the ones that don't. And over time, you're going to have a world-class livestock operation. That's what I love about the South Pole cattle, is they are, they're docile, they're pretty hardy, just on grass alone. Matter of fact, one of our, rules, we're not supposed to feed them any grain, and you're not supposed to show them. I think that's the big thing. Teddy, at the very start, said, we're not showing these things. We're not going to put them in shows.
Right.
Because we don't want show judges ruining the breed. Because they're going to get them bigger, and do things that take away from grass efficiency. at the end of the day, we are in the grass harvesting business. And so you get an animal that's the right size, he's going to be a lot more efficient. So a 1,400-pound cow versus a 1,000-pound cow, give me the 1,000-pound cow every single day. Yeah.
And, to speak to that too, being a youngish person, farming is hard, getting land is hard, even if you find a good leased section. And making money with these animals is a hard concept, and matching the genetics to fit your land and grazing principles is going to make you a more economically sustainable farmer, which is a huge thing.
It is.
And for especially young people who probably go into this not with any money at all.
Yes.
And so you think that's a good investment. If they're going to invest in something, that might be probably one of the better things to invest in.
Absolutely. Get a good start of livestock and work on that livestock. Don't go out and buy a new tractor or a new four-wheeler or a new baler or mower or rake, all that metal stuff. Forget about it. Save you up a nest egg enough to buy one cow. If that's all you can start with is one cow, you can take that cow to a bull to get her bred, or you can get her AI'd. You don't just get that cow, and then she's going to give you another one, and you're on your way.
Yeah.
You're on your way.
Awesome.
Teddy Gentry sold me 22 cow-calf pairs in 2002, I believe it was. Today, total head we're up to 321. That's all internal. We bought a few, we went back and bought a few more heifers from Teddy, but what I'm saying here is they reproduce themselves. And at the end of the day, what's so awesome about them is they're doing it all on grass, and you can eat them. You can sell them to somebody, support their family, your neighborhood. They're great for the environment. They're trampling litter on the ground. They're healing the earth. They're restoring the water cycle, and they're making America great again. There's a great, great opportunity here for young people to get back on the land.
Awesome. For producers who are utilizing rotational grazing practices, like they've been in it for 10, 20 years, maybe not 20, but let's say 10 years. They've been doing it, they've gotten a good feel for it, they've been doing it on their farm, they got their farm set up so they can do it. How do they know that they're moving in the right direction when it comes to this? Are there any indicators when it comes to the grasses, the forages, the soil, the animals? Like, how do they know that? Because sometimes it's a slow change, and so you can kind of put blinders on every once in a while and you can't see that change. So,
well, first of all, when your animals start thriving, in other words, they're getting fat, they lose their winter hair coat, they're sleek, it looks like you put armor all down the center of their backs, they're just oily looking. Those are animals that are performing on your soil types. And then you start looking at the forages. Becky, you've got to give these forages time to regrow. And if you're coming in way too many animals and you graze it off too short and you come back too soon, that's a real recipe for bankruptcy. You're not going to last. You're going to go out of business. The other thing is, be looking for indicator plants out there that are telling you you're going the right way. Some of those are clovers. You don't want a solid stand of grass. You want diversity in your grass. So the more diversities of species you have on your pasture, some of you may not know what they are. Mm-hmm. If it's not a weed, if an animal will eat it. And so I like diversity. Even if there's some brush out there growing, my animals will eat those leaves. I'm not going to fret about it. The one thing I think you will make a mistake on, a lot of young people, especially starting out, well, it's got to be pretty. It's got to look like my yard out front. No, it doesn't. It's a pasture. It's not a yard.
Right. Yeah, and that's one question I think I hear a lot too, is people like say, what do you do about the weeds? Specifically, they'll say, eastern red cedar we have a lot here of, or horse nettle. It's not so you say it's not a weed if they eat it. If they nibble at it, but the plant becomes more and more of a problem.
You need to control it. And
okay.
When you mentioned eastern red cedar, the hair on my neck stood up. I got a radar for those things. Now, they can grow down in my draws, but I do not want an eastern red cedar up there on my hillside. And it's because they drop needles and they kill your soil. And so anytime you have acid soil, you're not going to make a living. You can't grow grass. So you can't take eastern red cedar. Another one that's coming in is autumn olive. Mm-hmm. They're invasive. You got to control those. You can leave a few of them, but you can't be this nature Nazi that says, oh, I'm not going to kill anything. You've got to control some of this brush. Do you know why? Because a pasture is always trying to revert back to old growth forest. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you and the animals and your management to keep that from happening.
So, kind of playing devil's advocate on that topic, especially here in Virginia, you are exactly right. Like, our pastures are constantly wanting to go back to old growth hardwood forest.
Yep.
It first starts with autumn olive and cedar slowly comes in, and then before you know it, 5 years, you got a woods again.
Yep.
So people will be like, well, if it wants to be woods, just let it be a woods. And it's like, okay, well, how can I farm a woods? It's like, we are part of nature, but we need to learn to manage it properly.
Becky, we need to learn to raise food on land without the use of fossil fuel. There is no better way than ruminants. Ruminants, you and I can eat grass until we fall over and die. A ruminant can eat grass because they got a multi-stomachs and they got a rumen with bugs in there. Those bugs break down the grass and turn it into meat. You and I can't do that. So we got to use ruminants. I mean, we don't need fossil fuel guzzling machines to make a living. And I'm sorry, but we're getting a lot of bloody nose out in agriculture today because we're doing some really terrible farming practices. We need to change, and it's called regenerative agriculture. Regenerate, not sustain, regenerate.
What is your definition of regenerative agriculture?
So my definition of regenerative agriculture is you're taking a degraded resource, if you come in on a land that's been abused, and you're making it better each year. Your animals are getting better, your bottom line is getting better, your community is getting better, you're bringing more employees on. Now you can afford to hire people. I mean, Joel Southland's got 23 full-time employees on this farm. And he's only got, there's like 300 acres here. There's people in Kansas that are farming 5,000 acres of row crop and they both work in town. They can't make a living on 5,000 acres of wheat.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? And they both work in town. And their wives work in town.
Yeah.
There's not a living to be made there. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Last question for you here. If there was one thing a new grazer, grass farmer could do starting today on their operation, what do you think is one of the most impactful or most important strategies or principles that they can use or do?
Fence, water, and start rotating those animals. Try and get trampling going. Try and get your plants recovered. Where when you move your animals each day, or however often you move them, they're accomplishing something for you. You want the animals. I look at my animals as employees. I want them to gain weight every day, and so I want to make sure my animals are gaining weight. I want to make sure they're trampling some of this forage we call carbon back onto the soil surface, because I know that's my deposit, and that's going to grow more grass. So you newbies out there, if you can trample a blade of grass on the ground with a cow hoof, you get 2 blades back. What's better than that? And over time, Becky, you can run more livestock on the same amount of land without having to buy any more. What's land here in this country? I mean, it's crazy, the price of it. So, yeah. Awesome. Build soil with ruminant animals. That's what I say. So, fence, you got to have fence. You got to control them. Make sure they stay on your farm. Get some good water placement out there where the animals don't have to walk, miles to get water. It should be good water. And then start working on rotating them, and then start on your marketing. You've got to have marketing. Because you raise them and you can't sell them, then it doesn't do any good to raise them. That's the beautiful thing about these type of animals, though. There is a market out there that's just exploding.
It really is.
The right kind, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Greg, thank you so much. Thank you for all your YouTube videos that you put out there. I know a lot of people following you on that. And I feel like most of the phone calls I get nowadays is, do you know who Greg Judy is? I'm like, yeah, I do. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
You bet. I appreciate it. It's an honor. Thank you, Becky.